PLA and DTP, they are being invested by RAW, and RAW is sitting in Afghanistan. Now we would be talking about the future of Afghanistan. Of course, I have with me Major retired Adil Raja, who's hawking upon RAW very well, and we just need to ask him about whatever they are doing in Afghanistan, what their ambitions are. Sir, my question to you is uh, how do you see the future of RAW in Afghanistan?
Rasa, you see, first of all, we need to ascertain and we need to acknowledge that Indians have got legitimate security concerns when it comes to Afghanistan, and they've got stakes in Afghanistan because they've invested quite heavily into Afghanistan because of their security stakes, because of the security concerns. But at the cost of reputation, they've got selective amnesia when it comes to talking about terrorism emanating from Afghanistan. They tend to forget about their own sponsorship of terrorism from Afghanistan inside Pakistan and into the region now. Now, talking about the future specifically, you see, the Indians have failed to stop the Afghan peace process the way it was going ahead. They never wanted the US Taliban peace deal to formalize and finalize, but it has been signed. And the Americans will be pulling out from Afghanistan by the end of 2021. Now, it is not in the Indian interest for the US forces to pull out, but you see, the US interest do not converge with Indian interest in this regard. The US needs to pull out. Now, as far as putting Indians in charge of Afghanistan is concerned, it is simply out of question because China, Russia, and Pakistan are all working in cohesion against the Indian interest there. So it is not going to happen, and it is an established fact. And Indians realize that too. Their best bet they see is to keep on investing on NDS and to keep on investing in the Kabul government, and they want to be part of any multi-country international alliance which is working inside Afghanistan, and they want to stay involved per force in the Afghan peace process now as well, which is not going to happen. I mean, their future strategy now depends largely upon containing the Taliban through ISIS-K, and by sponsoring NDS, they want to contain the Taliban. By sponsoring the Kabul government, they want to counter the future government of Taliban inside Afghanistan, and they want to counter the Pakistani influence in Afghanistan, and they want to keep the sword of FATF hanging on Pakistan, and through financial constraints, they want to control Pakistan to the threat of sanctions, to the threat of Western camps, international economic sanction on Pakistan. They want to control Pakistan, and they want to control the influence of Pakistan in Afghanistan. Well, it is not going to happen, let me tell you. Pakistan has already embarked upon a journey alongside China and Russia in the region, and Iran has already joined the camp, Turkey in the camp, and there we can see a redefined global world order in the making, in which the globalization is seeing the demise, and we are entering into an era of regional alliances working together for their own interests and working among themselves in towards the achieving the national objectives of the countries inside those alliances. And Pakistan, China, Russia is one such alliance in which Iran and Turkey has also joined in. So you see, India's got very less to little to no chance at all. So they want to control the backyard of Pakistan, China, and Russia through in Afghanistan, dictating their own policy goals in Afghanistan Well, that is not going to happen, and they also realize it, and that is why they will be following the policies which I've just told you. As far as the after effects of the Indian policy in Pakistan is concerned, well, there is a growing realization among the world powers. I'm not talking about Western camp, mind you, that the Indian sponsorship of terrorism inside Pakistan from Afghanistan is creating more destabilization in the most nuclear armed region of the world than anything else. So India will have to reconcile upon the policy charted by Mr. Ajit Doval to fund terrorism inside Pakistan if they want to see peace anytime in the future. Otherwise, what we are seeing in the future is that the fate of Afghanistan will be decided by an ongoing war between Taliban and the Kabul government, which frankly doesn't stand a chance against Taliban. Because you see, if the Americans couldn't defeat Taliban inside Afghanistan, how can the Kabul government with Indian sponsors, with their Indian sponsors, can do that, or NDS can do that? It's not going to happen. So they will have to reconcile their differences, and they'll have to reach on some sort of a peace accord if they don't want this fire which they're fueling now in the region reach inside India, because eventually that will happen.
Sir, a very interesting question I have for you. We already know that when Taliban came back, or Mujahideen came back to Kabul last time, I think Najibullah, he was hanged in Kabul. And we already have these kind of horrible precedents which were set in Afghanistan. Now we have another person, uh, Amrullah Saleh, I wanted to talk about. Amrullah Saleh was nowhere in the scene. He was, airdropped by American C-130s at Bagram Air Base post 9/11, and then suddenly he started trying to become some kind of a politician, and he headed NDS as well. So he created very important relationship with the Indians. He is always against Pakistan. I just wanted to ask his relationship, how he could use this influence for the future purposes of RAW in Afghanistan, and how he could create RAW's presence, or he could help RAW's presence in Afghanistan in coming future, knowing the fact that once Afghan peace deal is done, then of course Taliban would be sharing the power, and how long Taliban would be taking sort of this influence of NDS and RAW in Afghanistan.
Faisal, as far as the Taliban are concerned, with their recent approach towards the United States and the global powers regards diplomacy is concerned, it is, if it gives you any clue, it does tell you that they are showing flexibility in making a peace accord and making a one peace process successful. But keeping past precedents in view, we must understand that Afghanistan has got a bloody history, and whosoever has ruled Kabul has ruled it through force. So for now, we see Taliban cooperating with the US and the foreign forces in order for them to leave Afghanistan, which is their single point agenda. They don't want any foreign forces inside Afghanistan. So after the foreign forces have left Afghanistan at the end of 2021, then you'll see another story unfolding in which the, I would say, might is right, as always, in Afghanistan has prevailed, and we'll see that prevailing. And whosoever will be in a stronger military position, and whosoever would be in the position to force this particular point of view, would rule Kabul eventually. And you were saying that Amrul Saleh was parachuted inside Afghanistan. You see, all these people, they'll run away from where they have come from, because they understand that the rule of might is right works in Afghanistan, unfortunately, because they've got an age-old history of warmongering in the country, and only through force, if anyone has been able to control Kabul, has been able to do so through force. And once they were put out from there, they were again put out through force. So the future of Afghanistan, in my personal opinion, will be decided on the battleground, not on the tables eventually.
And sir, very last question, and it happens to be the most important question. You already know that last time when we captured Kalbhushan Jadhav, he entered in Pakistan from Iranian soil. So he somehow we could say that Iran previously Raw had some kind of network, which would not be able to, like, we won't see it in coming future. Reason being, just now what we have seen is Chinese, they have countered the Indian influence in Iran in terms of Chabahar. Chinese, they have struck a deal with the Iranians, which meant that Indian influence which they had in there, it won't be no more. So that means they've been taken out of there. So now it's only Afghanistan where Indian presence is in terms of raw. How do you see the things shaping up? And if this is a paralyzed kind of influence they would be having in Afghanistan, then this paralyzed influence, till what time it would stand?
You see, Raisa, if ground facts tell us something for sure, that is that India is now facing a two-front war, if at all they go to war, in their neighborhood, immediate neighborhood. Starting from what they faced at Galwan Valley in Ladakh, and to what's going on in Afghanistan, and the way the US have signed a peace deal with Taliban, and what the future holds for Afghanistan, keeping the way the past history of the country, Taliban will eventually take over Kabul by force, I would like to say, because there are historical evidence supporting this assumption. What India is going to do in future depends upon the approach it takes in establishing peace in the region by accepting the Chinese-sponsored Pakistani proposal. And in fact, I would suggest that our next program should be on the possibility of achieving peace in South Asia, and the single agenda which is hindering such a possibility is Kashmir, of course. And well, you see, I have written quite extensively about it, and I had presented a paper to a select group of gathering in Rawalpindi. Well, I was criticized for it, and I was appreciated, and because of the appreciation, I was allowed to present this paper to a highly powered gathering there at Rawalpindi, and it is published on my blog, the paper which I've written. But that is going to be a separate topic, and that I think should be form part of a separate program. Now, looking at the future of India and Afghanistan, for now, they will keep on sponsoring NDS, and they will keep on sponsoring the Kabul government, and they, at the clandestine level, the RAW will keep operating ISIS-K against Pakistan, and they'll keep operating TTP and BLA type insurgencies inside Pakistan. But they've got no future because India is faced, they realize it now, not only they're not up against Pakistan, but they're up against an alliance of China and Pakistan. And China-Pakistan interoperability haunts the Indian minds, let me tell you. And that interoperability is at the highest level. I mean, the Pakistani generals, as per the US reports, sit in the Central Military Commission of China. And that Central Military Commission is so secretive that even the Chinese themselves, they don't know the details of that commission. But, you know, the Pakistani officers are sitting there. That means that the China-Pakistan interoperability is there to stay. And it is a reality. And as far as the insurgency supported by India inside Balochistan and inside Pakistan to Afghanistan is concerned, well, the Indians need to realize that Chinese have not now got security stakes. They have got stakes in the security of Pakistan because of China-Pakistan economic corridor. So they are not going to be, they're not waging, the Indians are not waging a war only against Pakistan, but it is against the China-Pakistan alliance, which is now progressing into China-Pakistan-Russia alliance, joined by Iran and joined by Turkey. And as far as your original question, talking about Chabahar, of course, after President Xi Jinping's visit to Tehran, the Iranians, they have dumped the Chabahar rail project, which was the alternative route of India, and as they had conceived it to be their alternative route to Afghanistan and Central Asia, bypassing Pakistan, which was otherwise not business-wise feasible. You see, you've got a route available right now through Pakistan, which is the only business-friendly and feasible route to Afghanistan and beyond, and which is, of course, controlled by Pakistan. And the Indians don't like this fact, but they have to reconcile and they have to work towards achieving peace. And to achieve peace, there is a single point agenda which is stopping it, and that is Kashmir. Now, there are ways to solve this particular problem. And by solving this particular problem, I mean the major players in this entire saga of Kashmir, they have to come to an agreement and they have to demilitarize Kashmir. And only then we can proceed. And only then, you see, we are looking towards a progressive future. And only through peace, we can bring prosperity in the entire region, bringing out the poor people of the entire region out of this poverty. And peace is the only logical way forward. But I'm sorry to say, under the BJP government, under the policies of Mr. Ajit Doval, the Ajit Doval doctrine, so-called, you see, they are working exactly against fighting a war for someone who is sitting 7 seas across, that is the US. And I mean, it is simply not in the Indian interest to wage this war for the Western backers. But you see, the realization is still not there in India. And we have to work together to create this realization in India that there is a willingness in Pakistan, there is a willingness in China to make peace with India. It is only India which is stopping itself from making peace by remaining integral in their notions of terrorism and in their notions of grandiose. They have to realize that there are always two sides of a story, and they have to listen to our side of the story. And if they won't listen, I mean, the way things are going, it will be India first and foremost, which will be at the losing end.
With this positive, saying of yours that peace is the only logical way forward, I think this is the time that India must think about it. That the way India is investing on cross-border terrorism in the region, it would bring no fruits in terms of peace to the India, because war would beget war. If they would be going towards cross-border terrorism, of course, as you have earlier mentioned in one of the previous programs, this is something you have written books about, you have written textbooks about. So I think India needs to put an end to cross-border terrorism. And with this positive note, I would say thank you to my guest as well as to my viewers, and with the promise that next program we would be bringing soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raisa. Thank you, everyone.